We do it from the beginning, or?
Completely up to you. I think the beginning was really good, by the way. It was very
really
quotable.
Okay. Or we could just not do it.
Yeah.
If you're just going to take that. My name is Kusha Kave, co-founder and CEO of Imperium Drive. So we are launching a personal door-to-door mobility service that is as convenient as a ride-hailing or a taxi, but at half the cost. And it's driverless. We're launching the world's first driverless car rental service, which effectively is a service using an app. You could call a car rental to come to your doorstep within 5 minutes without a driver. Then you have to drive that car for as long as you need that car, for 10 minutes, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week. Once you're done with it, you don't even need to park it. You pull over wherever you are, go on the app and ask for a valet parking option, and the car will start driving off without a driver and disappears, and that's it. That's the experience. So effectively, an Uber that you drive yourself. Yeah, so UK, amongst many of its European peers and internationally, has been actually quite open, made a lot of progress from a regulatory perspective to allow the trial testing of driverless, autonomous, automated mobility over the past few years. And the regulator, the Law Commission, the government have been really active in pushing and promoting developments in this scene. So we've been lucky to be in the UK and benefit from that. We are working with all the stakeholders in the government, like CCAV, the Law Commission, British standards. I know they're not part of the government, but they're essentially setting standards for what we are looking to launch. And legality-wise, there's nothing legally against us, but always the regulation helps us to scale much faster and much more efficiently. So we have 4 cars and a group of volunteers selected by us who are currently using the service, giving us feedback, and we're making the service better and getting for our launch later on this summer. And the launch would be essentially a larger group of people in the city of Milton Keynes, where we are located and where we're going to launch this service, to be able to essentially order any of these 4 driverless car rental vehicles to come to their doorstep at any time of the day within a short notice. The brand we're launching is called Fetch. So the consumer brand is called Fetch, and essentially what that means, you can fetch a car to your doorstep within 5 minutes on an app with a click of a button. Because Imperium Drive is a technology company. Imperium Drive develops a technology that Fetch uses, which is remote driving. So what Imperium Drive has developed, and its IP, is to be able to remotely drive any vehicle. So, we're not just talking about passenger cars. We can our technology can remotely drive robots in warehouses, forklifts in factories, trucks in depots, and so on, and many other use cases. So our technology has different use cases, and this is just our first use case that we're focusing on to go to market, which is the driverless car rental use case. And we wanted to make sure that the operations of it is separate, and the branding of it is separate from Imperium Drive. So, and also it makes more sense to call it Fetch. We're going to grow as the demand essentially grows with us. We believe that people are going to love the service because nothing similar to this service has ever existed. You've never had the convenience of having a car rental dropped off to your doorstep in less than 5 minutes, and you've never had the convenience of having a car valet parked by itself without you having to look for a parking space. Off it goes. So we think this is going to grow very rapidly, and we're really excited about it. You know, in the next year or two, we're looking to expand across Milton Keynes and then potentially start our operations in other major cities in the UK. So, you know, I've obviously put, you know, the last 3.5 years of my life into this company, and essentially, it's, you know, I've been breathing remote driving and driverless technology for the past 3 years. So it means a lot to me and my co-founders. We would like to take this company and essentially go head-to-head with the large fleet operators of the world, you know, the likes of, you know, Uber and taxis and car rental companies. But obviously, we need to also make sure that we can benefit from partners in this journey. So along the way, we are happy definitely to partner with OEMs, vehicle manufacturers, fleet operators, to essentially help take this technology and this service not just across the UK, but globally, everywhere. It has essentially become my life priority right now. So, you know, you wake up, you go to sleep, you know, you have your mission in your mind. You can never escape it. Even, you know, at dinner parties with friends over the weekend, you still have that in your mind. And to be perfectly honest with you, I love it. I love that it has given me a sense of purpose. It has given me a sense of passion, ambition, and drive that gets me up every single day in the morning. However, it is a very, very demanding lifestyle, because you have to dedicate, you can essentially, you know, you cannot make plans for your, you know, next summer holiday from now on, because you never know how much work you're going to be involved in at that time. So it has turned me to more of a you know, more flexible, more spontaneous person as a personality. But because I have a much higher goal and objective with this company, that is perfectly fine with me. I've come to terms with it. So my friends and families are all fully supportive and understanding of the situation, which I'm very grateful of. Obviously, being so committed to a startup that's growing and that's taking, it has its downside with regards to, you know, socializing with friends and people that you would like to meet more, or new people are a bit hindered in that sense. But obviously, it's, you know, you win some, you lose some in life, right? And for me, this is the compromise that I'm perfectly happy to make. So the driverless, or I would call it autonomous vehicle industry, over the past few years have essentially promised a lot, but haven't delivered much. And that's where we are with autonomy. What we are saying is that we are going to take a different approach to the problem of solving autonomous driving, and that is a remote drive first approach, which means we will not offer a fully autonomous vehicle service. First, we will remotely control cars and offer still a driverless, in a sense. There's no driver physically in that vehicle, but there's a driver sitting behind the wheel remotely. And then that allows us to offer a service today and slowly solve autonomy over time. So without actually promising that next year we're going to solve autonomy, we are offering a service that's still beneficial, still didn't exist before, it's still a revolutionary, but it also allows us to gather a lot of data, learn and solve the bigger problem, which is completely removing humans from the equation of driving a car over time, as opposed to overnight, which is what many other peers of us have tried to do. So our roles are actually very, very clear. It has been clear from the beginning. We met at an acceleration program called Entrepreneur First, where we started the company, and we'd all quit our jobs and, you know, very eager to, you know, start our own company and make an impact, because, you know, usually working with large corporations does not usually make always the impact that you'd like to make as a startup founder. So my first co-founder, Sandeep, he comes from the wireless communication world. You know, many years of working in the 5G connectivity connected cars domain, and essentially he takes care of everything to do with the connection between the remote driving station that a human sits and the vehicles where the vehicle needs to be essentially communicated. All the video streaming, all the data transfer, all is under his responsibility. And then we have Navid, who is my third co-founder. He comes from the autonomous driving world. He worked for the many OEMs, the likes of VW, Siemens, trains, developing autonomous trains, autonomous trucks. So his experience essentially comes from the autonomous driving world, and he's involved with all the robotics, AI, and control aspects, which means everything that makes our software safe, makes our operations safe, is essentially under Navid. As you could imagine, we use wireless communication networks, so 4G, 5G cellular networks to communicate with our vehicles, and any disruption in this communication could hinder safety. So we've developed a lot of technology on the vehicle, which is essentially our IP, to make sure no matter what happens to the connectivity, that car on the road being remotely driven is always in safe hands. And all that technology, which is a series of different technologies, or been developed by the team that is led by Navid. So, and myself, I take care of everything that is non-technical. So anything from partnership, marketing, business development, operations. Essentially, it's under my section of my responsibility. Well, I think there are two things. One is, personal connection. So a co-founder is essentially a friend, a family member, I would even say, for the next 10 to 15 years of your life. So you're choosing, maybe for the first time, a family member of yours for 15 years. So you will have to be comfortable, personality-wise. You have to get on with each other. You have to have similar interests, similar life. It helps a lot to be able to, engage and work a lot more efficiently. And the second part is skills and competencies of it. I would say look for complementary skills. Don't look for similar skills, because complementary skills is only useful in the business side of things, where get to places where you need skills that your co-founder has. It's so relieving and so productive, because you don't have to go out and look for somebody else that you may not know on a short notice, because things change in a startup on a daily basis, and your needs will change on a daily basis. So essentially, skills, personality, I would say, is the first, is the two main sort of factors I would take into account. But then again, drive, motivation, and stage of life is also important for both to be aligned as well. So, when you're looking for a co-founder, that person has to also have 100%, if not 120%, belief in wanting to do a startup, and that's what we had from the beginning. All three of us were determined that the next stage of our life is doing a startup. We were not in two minds about it, or we were not thinking about, let me do this for a year and then see what happens and I can always get a job. No, you have to be determined that this is the next stage of your life, because you can never predict whether that will take off in 6 months, a year, 2 years. I mean, we had COVID in between, and it's only determination and tenacity that will make a startup succeed. Yes, so we have a technology that essentially the success of the business behind following from the technology is not just determined by the tech. We have other factors that would play a part, being the regulation, being consumer behavior, and also be the fact that we are saying autonomous vehicles, the way they've been going on for the past 10 years, are not essentially happening, and not the best way forward to get to fully autonomous. So when you're talking to investors, you have to find the right investors who have share the same beliefs and the values, and most importantly, outlook in the industry to what we're doing. So investors who still very much believe in autonomous vehicles, fully autonomy happening next year or around the corner at scale, potentially will, not be the best investors for us. And investors who are a bit more, realistic about regulation, in knowing that this service has been, invested into for a long time, many years, has to have regulation that will support it anytime soon, versus investors who will not take any risk related with regulation, would be different type of investors. So we've had the same, essentially our fundraising strategy has been a bit different to a typical startup, in a sense that we've had a rolling round, which means we are always interested to talk to investors, because we are always in the search of the right investor, as opposed to looking for just the capital. We're looking for mindset, we're looking for support, and things that as we call smart money, as opposed to money that is just capital. There are multiple ways to find them. One is through your connections that have relevant sector experience. So, if you are working with a partner who is in your sector but supplying some services or parts to you, look at their investors and see which investors believe in them. So going through a network effect, having introductions through people that you work with, it's obviously, I would say, the most preferred way to get to the right investor. Others are going through programs, so acceleration programs that you've attended as a startup, founder, in our case, Entrepreneur First, Techstars, and many other programs that we attended, essentially have put us in touch with investors that they thought will share the same value, and many of them did. Word of mouth, with other founders. Other founders are essentially, have gone through the same stages of challenging stages of finding investors, and they know exactly which investor would potentially like which kind of startup in terms of sector, stage of development, and so on. That's that. And I would also really strongly advise going to associations, so investor associations, and look at sector-specific investors. So, past similar investments in your sector, other startups in your sector, who are the main investors? And then look, obviously, as long as it's not competitive, would always be useful to look and see which other similar startups they've invested into that you could approach. I would potentially approach investors much later than I did initially. That's one thing, because you're almost, startup is obviously a search organization, in search of a business model, in search of product market fit. That's what startup definition is. Now, at the beginning of it, you have an idea, you have some level of validation, but you haven't quite worked out, what's your business model, what's your pricing, what's the market niche that you're after. But investors would like to know everything. So I would say until you've worked everything out, investors or meeting investors would be more to get feedback, to understand what you need to work on to be investor ready. So I would potentially, have more investor friends at that moment who give you feedback, as opposed to, going to a fundraising process right at the beginning. That's definitely one of the tips that I would give founders who've just started, or the much earlier stage in their life cycle. Legacy is actually one of the most important reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm a big believer that we're in this world to change something, and we should not leave this world without having changed something. And that's literally what gives me a sense of purpose, happiness in life, is knowing that I am either on the path to make that change, or I have made that change to some extent, and I'm still changing it. So that's essentially what I realized as a founder, as a person, is a big driver for me. So the elements where I'm going to change how urban door-to-door transportation is going to, is going to take place from next few years onwards. It's really important to me. So and I hope that I could leave a company. The only thing that I would add is that legacy is really important for me, and knowing that I am going to leave a legacy gives me even more drive to get up in the morning and do what I'm doing right now. People can go to fetchcar.io, pretty simple, and they could sign up for a test drive. And once we are in their area, we'll give them a shout and invite them for a test drive of our vehicles.